Israel United in Christ is not affiliated with any other Israelite group. We are a nonviolent, Bible based movement. We do not advocate or condone any acts of violence against any race, ethnicity, or gender. We advise that if anyone hears or knows of any plots to cause harm to anyone or to break the laws of the land, you must contact the proper authorities to bring awareness to any possible threat, as stated in Leviticus chapter 5, verse 1.
Hey, I just shot that to the email too. All right. Hey, shalom, shalom, Israel, Most High Christ bless. It's your brother, Officer Yari, and I got reading for me this morning.
Soldier Joseph.
Hey, shalom to y'all. Good morning, good morning. Well, Lord's will, everybody's able to have a productive day this morning. Not too many of us is locked up or locked in the houses, and some of us may be working remotely. Just remember to keep enduring, Israel. Keep enduring. Today's class will be titled Understanding the Characteristics of Spirits. All right, let's send us some quick prayers. Sisters, cover your heads. Brothers, uncover your heads. Let's go ahead and get started. Blow trumpets. Oh, Heavenly Father, Father of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, we come to you, dear Lord, asking that you continue to guide us and strengthen us, dear Lord. Continue to give us understanding as we go through our trials and our tribulations throughout our times, dear Lord. As we seek your understanding as we go through our everyday situations, dear Lord. Continue to give us the strength to carry on, to keep your law, statutes, and commandments in the faith of your Lord Jesus the Christ, dear Lord. As we come to you humbly, dear Lord, asking for your forgiveness for any of our trespasses and our sins against thee, dear Lord. Continue to grant us the mercy and the grace that you have bestowed upon us, dear Lord. And we thank you. And I ask that you continue to send laborers into the vineyard, dear Lord. Send those that are sincere, dear Lord, in keeping your law, statutes, and commandments and pushing your truth throughout the four corners of the earth. Continue to strengthen us up and bless those that are sick among us, dear Lord, and continue to heal all those that seek your law, statutes, and commandments and your judgments, dear Lord. In Jesus' name I pray thee, and I ask that this class be edifying, dear Lord. Amen. All right, shalom again. All right, how's everyone doing? How's everyone doing? I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it. So again, class title is Understanding the Characteristics of Spirits. Yeah, my mic is on. Had it a little too far from me. All right, there we go. All right, pull up that dictionary.com, that definition of spirits or of spirits. And if you go through, like, even on Wikipedia, everywhere, it all says this is always the definition, at least this first part. I've seen different ones, but this is the constant that I've seen. Read that right there.
Dictionary.com, definition of spirit is a noun, the principle of conscious life, the vital principle in humans, animating the body or mediating between body and soul.
Part I'm looking at is the animating the body or mediating between body and soul. Animating the body. Why? Because the spirit now, when we read into the scriptures, we understand that the spirit is your mind. I actually get that Ephesians 4:23 real quick, in case some of us do not understand that. Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 23, read that.
This is the book of Ephesians, chapter 4 and verse 23. And be renewed in the spirit of your mind.
Notice it said be renewed in the spirit of your mind. In the spirit of your mind. It said be renewed in the spirit of your mind. So your mind is the spirit according to the Bible. That is your spirit. Now notice it said animating the body. It's what drives the body. Now also we know your soul or your flesh as well, right? And that's what the scriptures tells us. That's the battle between. Let's go into the understanding that Job has given us. He understands the difference between the type of spirit. Watch what he says in Job 32. Job 32, we're going to read verse 8.
This is the book of Job, chapter 32 and verse 8. But there is a spirit in man, and the inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding.
You see that? It said there's a spirit in man, but what?
The inspiration of the Almighty giveth them understanding.
The inspiration of the Almighty giveth him understanding. Now, there is a spirit in man. Watch this. Go to Job. Stay in Job, chapter 20, verse 3. Quick understanding from Job. Verse 3. Yep,
that's the book of Job, chapter 20, and verse 3. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer.
You see that? Look what verse 2 says.
Verse 2. Therefore do my thoughts cause me to answer, and for this I make haste.
You see that? It said, my thoughts cause me to answer. Now read 3.
Verse 3. I have heard the check of my reproach, and the spirit of my understanding causeth me to answer.
See that? Then he called it the spirit of my understanding causes me to answer. And now he also understands what? There's another type of spirit, or he understands spirits of that have a physical form. Go to Job chapter 4. And start at verse 13.
This is the book of Job, chapter 4 and verse 13. In thoughts from the visions of the night, when deep sleep falleth on men, fear came upon me, and trembling, which made all my bones to shake. Then a spirit passed before my face. The hair of my flesh stood up.
You see that? He said, a spirit passed before his face, made his hair stand up on his skin. Read.
It stood still, but I could not discern the form thereof. An image was before mine eyes. There was silence, and I heard a voice saying.
You see that? So he understood that that was a spirit. He also called that a spirit. Some we say it was a ghost, things of that nature. But Job, this is how he explained it. So now let's get into understanding the difference of it, or just the different spirits by seeing the characteristics, because it's important when we look, because what happened is we might see a man do something, we might see our brother, our sister, someone do things, and we judge them carnally. What I mean by that is we're looking at just their actions, solely their actions, and going to our thoughts of what that is. And we're not actually thinking about what the Bible says, those type of characteristics. What does that mean? Or what type of spirit is dealing with our brother, or what type of spirit is dealing with our sister? So let's go into the understanding of that. That's what I mean when I'm talking about understanding the difference. Let's start at Proverbs chapter 15. So I don't, obviously there's multiple spirits, but I touched on a couple things that we could notate and things that we can see and say, oh, that's what type of spirit. Okay. Based upon what the scriptures tells us, we could look at the characteristics of that type of spirit, what that means. So 15, let's read verse 4.
It's
Yep, go ahead.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but the perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit.
It says, A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. Why does it say perverseness is a breach of spirit? Why does it say that? Go to Wisdom of Solomon. Why does it say perverseness is a breach of spirit? Let's let the Wisdom of Solomon help us a little bit. Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2, and we're going to read verse 23 and 24. So it said perverseness is a breach of spirit. Okay, get that?
This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2 and verse 23. For God created man to be immortal and made him to be an image of his own eternity.
So first we understand that, okay, God made us to be immortal, and we are made in his image, right? Read.
Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world.
And it said, but through envy of the devil came death into the world. Read on.
And they that hold of his side do find it.
Right. And if you're in that manner, you will find the death. If you have that envy, you will find the death, right? Now it says he made us to be immortal in his image, but the envy of the devil, death came. Go back a chapter. Go back a chapter 1. Because we're trying to get the understanding of why perverseness is a breach of the spirit. Is that how God intended our spirits to be? That's why it's a breach. Matter of fact, get that just in case we don't understand what breach is. Get that. Just pull it up real quick, the definition of breach for me. And we're going to go to Wisdom of Solomon 1 and 15.
This is dictionary.com. Definition of breach is a noun, the act or a result of breaking.
Notice that? The act or result of breaking, a breach of spirit. It's a breaking of the spirit. That's what perverseness is. Okay, it's a breach of the spirit. Like when you breach a contract, you break the contract. Okay? So now you're taking away from what the spirit is meant to do or to be. All right? So again, so we know that based upon Proverbs 15, verse 4, perverseness is a breach of contract. We went to Solomon 2, 23 and 24. We know that God made men to be immortal, but the envy of the devil caused death or brought upon us death. So we're in Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1, verse 15. Read that.
This is the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 1 and verse 15. For righteousness is immortal.
Now it says righteousness is immortal. That's what God made us to be righteous. He made us to be immortal. Righteousness is immortal. Read.
But ungodly men with their works and words called it to them. For when they thought to have it to their friend, they consumed to naught.
You see that? It said when they thought to have it to their friend, they consumed to naught. Who's that? The ungodly consumed to death. Remember it told us in Wisdom of Solomon 2 that the envy of the devil brought death. You see that? That's the breaching of the spirit. Read on.
And made a covenant with it because they are worthy to part with it, to take part with it.
You see that? Because that is the breach of the spirit. Okay? That death. The ungodly causes that. We were made to be righteous and immortal. But because of the envy or wrath or anything that obviously goes against the Most High God, we have death in there. That's that breach. That's why perverseness breaches the spirit, which other in turn does what? Causes death. Watch this. We will keep helping you. So now the reason why we're going here is so now you can understand a perverse spirit when it's around you. If it's dealing with one of your brothers or one of your sisters, you could tell that, okay, that's a perverse spirit. That's an envious spirit right now that's happening. That's what's going on. I see the characteristics of it. Okay? Matter of fact, go back to Proverbs 15 so we don't lose the full thought. So now we understand what it's saying. Read it again.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life.
So it's talking about the tongue. Read.
But perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit.
You see that? And so it's talking about that tongue. Let's stay in chapter 15 and jump up to verse let's read down. Actually, just jump down to 13.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 13. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but the sorrow of the heart, the spirit is broken.
Now it says the sorrow of the heart, the spirit is broken. So now we got perverseness and sorrow. These are things that breaks the spirit. When you start to see, even you could say a depressed person, right? When you start to see that, someone who's, you can see they're heavy in their spirit, you understand what type of spirit they're dealing with. Like, okay, they got a spirit of heaviness on them right now. They have that depression or that sorrow on them. Their spirit is wore down both ways, right? And then you also see a person who's very perverse, and they're no longer taking heed or being mindful, okay, of the tongue. All right, two different ways, but you can see the characteristic. That's what you're looking for. Read that part again.
The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 13. A merry heart maketh a cheerful countenance, but by sorrow of the heart the spirit is broken.
Read verse 14.
Verse 14. The heart of him that had understanding seeketh knowledge, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness.
You see that? It said, but the mouth of fools feedeth on foolishness. So you have two different things there. Two types of characteristics that you can home in on and understand, okay, one, again, they're no longer being mindful of their tongue or the sorrowness, okay, or the heaviness or the depressed person. Because that's today's terminology, right? Depressed, right? But you can see these people, okay, their spirit is starting to break. Like, man, okay. Now it's not for you to just only identify and say, oh, that's what that is. Of course, okay, you can see it. So now you could start having solutions or ideas of how to help that spirit, because you know, guess what? That person's spirit is breaking. That's what's going on. That's what's going on inside them or within them. Okay, and you start to see that. You're looking at the different characteristics that they're displaying, and you know what type of spirit is dealing with them. All right. From there, go to Sirach 30. Remember what Sirach 30 tells us about heaviness of heart? That's why it says that. Start at verse 21.
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 30 and verse 21. Give not over thy mind to heaviness.
That's why it tells us don't give our minds over to heaviness. Read on.
And afflict not thyself in thine own counsel.
Notice that we read this a lot. Notice it says afflict not thyself in thy own counsel, because that's what will happen. You know, you start worrying about something. You start always thinking about something. You're giving yourself over to it, and then you're telling yourself about it instead of maybe going to get the counsel because you need it. You're afflicting your own self in your counsel. That's what happens. You get really hard up. You get down on yourself, things of that nature. That's what the scriptures talk about when it says you're afflicting your own self in your counsel. Read on.
Verse 22, the gladness of the heart is the life of man, and the joyfulness of a man prolongeth his days.
Notice it said, that's the life, the gladness of heart is the life of man. It said joyfulness prolong your days. Read on. Let's go explain itself.
Verse 23, love thine own soul and comfort thine heart. Remove sorrow far from thee, for sorrow had killed many.
Why? That's why. That's the opposite. Sorrow has killed many. And then what?
And there is no profit therein.
You see that? Sorrow has killed many, and there's no profit therein. Read on.
Verse 24, envy and wrath shorten the life.
Now it tells you envy and wrath shortens the life. Now these things we got to be mindful of. Why? If we notice the characteristics within ourselves. Now we have to be mindful of that thing because we see the characteristics within us, like how you've been moving. Like, dang, I've been moving a certain way. I have to be mindful of that thing. It says envy and wrath have shortened a life. So not only, you see how these things go hand in hand when you go throughout the Bible, you notice that these things kind of stick close together. Read.
And carefulness bringeth age before the time.
And worriness bring age before the time. So now you have to be mindful of those things for yourself. You can see the characteristics within you and be like, okay, hold on. Now you can gauge what you need to do for yourself. So not only are you seeing it, because I know I speak of this often, so now we want to dig into it a little bit to understand what we're looking for when we look at these different characteristics and try to see, okay, this is the type of spirit that I might be dealing with. Or, like I said, if you look out and you see your brother or sister moving in a certain way, all right, you see the characteristics and you know what type of spirit that is, okay? From there, read verse. No, that's it. That's it on that. Go to 1 Samuel. Go back to 1 Samuel chapter 18. Look what it said. We go pick up on a couple things about, we know this story as well, obviously, right? With Samuel and David. When David started to get some praise, Samuel got mad at him, right? Or he was envious, right? Let's pick in on a couple things because now we're looking at the characteristic that we could see, all right, and what the Bible said it was, all right? So 1 Samuel chapter 18, we're going to start at verse 6.
This is the book of 1 Samuel chapter 18 and verse 6. And it came to pass as they came, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Philistine, that the women came out of all cities of Israel, singing and dancing to meet King Saul with tabrets, with joy, and with instruments of music. Mm-hmm. And the women answered one another as they played and said, Saul had slain his thousands, and David his 10,000s. And Saul was very wroth, and the saying displeased him. And he said, they have ascribed unto David 10,000s, and to me they have ascribed but thousands.
Now you notice, boom, immediately jealousy kicked in right there. Remember what we read in Wisdom of Solomon, envy of the devil caused death. Jealousy kicked in right there in Saul. That's where it all started. Jealousy kicked in, boom. He got envious immediately hearing that. Read on.
And what can he have more but the kingdom? And Saul eyed David from that day and forward.
You notice it said Saul eyed David. He what? From that day forward, he had an evil eye towards David out of his jealousy, envy, and wrath. He was envious, and he had an evil eye towards David from that day. Read on.
And it came to pass on the morrow that the evil spirit from God came upon Saul.
Then it came to pass. The very next day, that evil spirit came upon Saul. You see that? Read.
And he prophesied in the midst of the house. And David played with his hand, as at other times. And there was a javelin in Saul's hand.
Mm-hmm.
And Saul,
then, when you go into it, as you read down, you find out that Saul threw the javelin at David a couple times, right? If I'm not mistaken, yeah, it said twice, right? When you read on and you start to see how Saul started to pursue killing David. Let's drop down and read verse 27 now.
This is the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 18, and verse 27. Wherefore David arose and went, he and his men, and slew of the Philistines 200 men. And David brought their foreskins, and they gave them in full tale to the king, that he might be the king's son-in-law. And Saul gave him Michal, his daughter, to wife.
Now, mind you, Saul only sent David to go to the Philistines to try to get some foreskin because he figured he would die. But David actually was able to do that thing and then take his daughter to wife to be his son-in-law. Because obviously David loved Saul. He looked up to him, cherished the relationship. Read.
Verse 28. And Saul saw and knew that the Lord was with David, and that Michal, Saul's daughter, loved him. And
read.
And Saul was yet the more afraid of David, and Saul became David's enemy continually.
And then it said he was yet the more afraid of him. So not only was he upset, mad, and envious, then when he seen that, dang, there's nothing that's going to stop this guy, then he became afraid. That's what's the, is it inferior, right? Mm-hmm. You know, we say in the world, or, you know, you'll hear the term inferior, or he's inferior towards him, or that's what happens. One leader might see another young man coming up, and he's strong in the spirit, and now he's thinking, oh, this guy might take my spot, might take my seat. And he's inferior to the young brother. That's how you get different leaders holding men back. Different sisters holding the younger sisters coming up back. Telling them, oh, don't worry about it. Oh, don't. Now, of course, we understand everything's of the Lord, and, it may not be the person's time yet for whatever reason. It might have a good idea. Okay, cool. But you'll have the person actually consciously trying to hold someone down, trying to stop them from doing what the Most High intended them to do, like in this case. And now you can see that characteristic come forth. Through this example, you can see the characteristic. How Saul had that envy and hatred, basically, towards David on him. It went from wrath to fear because he knew the Lord was with him. No matter what he tried, he seen that David was prevailing. He knew the Lord was with him. I want us to understand, when we read back, remember when it said, I gave it away, I was going to ask the question, and it's back in verse 9 when it said, Saul eyed David. I was going to ask what that was. I gave it away. It's an evil eye. That's what that meant. He had that evil eye towards him, right? And he also had envy towards him. Remember what we just read. Actually, go back there to Wisdom of Solomon 2. Remember what we read. Wisdom of Solomon 2 and 24. Just verse 24.
It's the book of Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 2 and verse 24. Nevertheless, through envy of the devil came death into the world.
You see that? Remember we read that? Because of our own selves. That's where it comes from. Instead of us being immortal. Yeah, finish that off.
And they that do hold of his side do find it.
You see that? Go to 1 John chapter 3. What does that turn into? I know our brains are ticking now. 1 John 3:15.
It's the book
we
of
all
First.
know this.
It's the book of 1 John, chapter 3 and verse 15. Mm-hmm. Whosoever hated his brother is a murderer.
You see that? That's what happens. That's exactly. Now, there's often times where you don't physically and literally start to try to kill your brother, but you'll mess around and really wish him to be dead. Sisters, the same thing. Wouldn't mind it. If you heard that it might be possible, you wouldn't even try to stop it. That's what that spirit would lead you to do. That's why I said, read it again.
Whosoever hated his brother is a murderer.
You are a murderer. Read on.
And ye know that no murderer hath eternal life abiding in him.
You see that? And so people, they often will say, well, I've never thought about murdering no one. But if you hate your brother, that's what the Bible said you are. That's the comparison. That's what it is. Whether you realize it or not, that's how far that spirit would lead you. We have the example back with Saul and David. And that's what we have to process for ourselves. Why? Because again, understanding the characteristics of spirits is the most important to see it on yourself. To realize if you're moving in that, if that's what your thoughts are, because you know your thoughts. You know what you battle with. You know what you are having to rebuke. So when you're rebuking these things, you're like, dang, that's that type of spirit. What the heck? Heck no. I'm not going to let that thing overtake me. Start moving in that fashion. You see it, then you can help out your fellow brethren or your sister. Sometimes it may not be worth to just literally say, hey, this is what you have on you. But you know how to move dealing with them. You know how to move dealing with them. We oftentimes speak of these things. This is how we could start to gain that understanding and seeing based upon how people move. Now, how you think leadership always able to tell, like, oh yeah, we see you. They know what type of spirit that is. All right. From there, just go back a chapter. We're going to go to 1 John 2, and we're going to start at 15 there.
This is the book of 1 John, chapter 2, and verse 15. Mm-hmm. Love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. If any man love the world, the love of the Father is not in him.
Now, why are we reading this? Read on.
Verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh, and the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life is not of the Father, but is of the world.
So, notice it said lust of flesh, eyes, and pride of life. When you're what? If you're loving the things in the world, what type of spirit is that? No, you can say lustful, right? You can say lustful spirit. But what is attached with that? A covetous spirit, right? I'm going to touch on something else that we just read inside of it so we can see it. First, watch this. Go back to Proverbs 15 and 4. Remember it said lust of the flesh, eyes, love of the world, right? Read that.
It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 15 and verse 4. A wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit.
Notice, I want us to understand something, because this is how it starts. And mind you, not only is this how it starts, it even goes all the way back to when we're young. It goes all the way back to when we're little. So when you're dealing with your children, you got to be mindful of it. Remember in Sirach 30 when it talks about dealing with your children, watch what it says. I'm going to point out one thing. We'll put out one thing because all these go hand in hand. Lust, covetousness, pride. We heard that as well. Go to Sirach 30 and read verse 9.
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 30 and verse 9. Conquer thy child, and he shall make thee afraid. Play with him, and he will bring thee to heaviness.
Read.
Laugh not with him, lest thou have sorrow with him.
Right, because remember, it's talking about dealing with the children. Not let them get away with things, teaching them, right? Read on.
And lest thou gnash thy teeth in the end. Give him no liberty in his youth, and wink not at his follies. Bow down his neck while he is young, and beat him on the sides while he is a child, lest he wax stubborn.
Notice it said, while he is a child, lest he wax stubborn. Read.
And be disobedient unto thee, and so bring sorrow to thine heart.
Read on.
Chastise thy son, and hold him to labor, lest his lewd behavior be an offense unto thee.
Notice it said, lest his lewd behavior, because it's in the child. It starts very young. Somehow he'll have a lewd behavior if you're not teaching him properly, if you're not guiding him, if you're not correcting that child, him or her. Somehow they will pick up a lewd behavior. Is another form of perverseness. These tie together because we just read back in 1 John 15:6 or 2:15-16. Read that again so we don't miss it.
This is the book of 1 John, chapter 2 and verse 16. For all that is in the world, the lust of the flesh and the lust of the eyes and the pride of life is not of the Father.
All these things go hand in hand. That lust and pride, for some strange reason. When you start to look at the characteristics, you'll see it. And you start to be able to differentiate one from the other. We're going to go into a little bit of the pride. Let's drop down. Or actually drop down. Go to Psalms. Let's drop everything. Go to Psalms chapter 10. 10, we're going to read from 2 to 7.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 10 and verse 2. The wicked in his pride do persecute the poor. Let them be taken in the devices that they have imagined.
So I wanted to start there so we could see exactly who it's talking about. We know, talking about the wicked of the earth. Read.
For the wicked boasted of his heart's desires, and blessed the covetous, whom the Lord abhorred.
Now that type of spirit, notice I told you they go hand in hand. Read that part again.
For the wicked boasted of his heart's desire, and blessed the covetous,
You see that? Boast of his heart's desire and bless the covetous. Read.
Whom the Lord abhorreth.
Who God hate. God hate that thing. Read.
The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God.
And this is how you're starting to see that type of spirit. They don't seek after God. And what does that mean? You start to notice that a brother or sister, they no longer are really caring about trying to move according to the scripture. I'm not just talking about fringes and not eating pork, obviously. I'm talking about as they try to maneuver through their situations in life, you see that they're not really concerned about what the Bible say about it. They just move. They do what they do. This person doesn't necessarily, because you're not always going to see if someone going to get counsel, but what'll happen is this person's not trying to get counsel, things of that nature. You know, and the closer you are to that person, the more you'll be able to see that type of thing. But at the end of the day, you'll notice that, they just move. They're never concerned about what the scriptures say. They may even do something. You deal with them on a brotherly level, on a sisterly level, and you try to tell them what the scriptures say this and there. Well, I'm just read it again and then keep reading.
The book of Psalms, chapter 10 and verse 4. The wicked, through the pride of his countenance, will not seek after God. God is not in all his thoughts. His ways are always grievous. The judgments are far above out of his sight.
It says, thy judgments are far above out of his sight. They don't understand judgment. Read.
As for all his enemies, he puffeth at them. Mm-hmm. He had said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity.
Now that's just the total pompous, right? Or the total conceited, the total arrogant. Easy to identify when you see that characteristic, right? Like, oh, okay, they're prideful. Boom. Easy. Read on.
His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity.
Now we go touch on that part. Then it says his mouth is full of deceit, fraud. Said they're full of mischief and vanity. Because what will happen is you start to see hypocritical characteristics come from the pride, come from the prideful spirit. Someone dealing with that, you start to notice the movements. And you'll see it. You'll go, You start to put two and two together. You might even ask the fellow brother or sister, do you see it? Is it just me? You'll see the characteristics. All right? So again, the prideful spirit, they start to have deceitfulness and arrogance, which builds that vanity. Then they'll be vain. The scriptures talk about vainness. In which I didn't even touch here. I didn't even touch on the vainglory spirit. But sometimes you'll get confused between the characteristics of a vainglory spirit and a prideful spirit, because sometimes they cross and they're similar in some ways. I'll tell you the quick difference now, because I didn't go into it, so we won't get to it. But the vainglory spirit will be more so on the side of just wanting to be seen, spotlight, things of that nature. Not necessarily, the vainglory spirit don't have to always be boastful. Although you would think that, conceitedness, vainglory, that's more pride. All right? But let's go. Dang, I figured I probably already had too much. Okay, it's all right though, because that's another good spirit to dive into, to understand. Read that again for me. Where was we at? 10 through. Yep. Read that again.
It's the book of Psalms, chapter 10 and verse 2.
No. Just verse 6 and 7.
It's the book of Psalms, chapter 10 and verse 6. He had said in his heart, I shall not be moved, for I shall never be in adversity. Mm-hmm. His mouth is full of cursing and deceit and fraud. Under his tongue is mischief and vanity.
From there, jump to Proverbs 8. Proverbs 8, and let's go to 13. Proverbs 8, verse 13.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 8 and verse 13. Mm-hmm. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy. So
now you notice how it's coupled together again. It said the fear of the Lord is to hate evil. It said pride, arrogancy, and what else?
And the evil way, and the forward mouth mouth do I hate.
You see that? And the forward mouth, the evil way and the forward mouth. All these things are coupled together. Notice how they're coupled together. Let's pull up forward, because I know a lot of us don't always understand that. It said the forward mouth. Pull up forward. See what that is.
It's dictionary.com definition of forward. It's an adjective. Willfully contrary. Not easily managed.
Notice it said willfully contrary, always opposite. It said not easily managed. Why? Because this type of person with the forward tongue is hard to deal with. When you see that characteristic on a brother or a sister, there's pride involved, whether they want to agree with it or not. That's according to the scriptures. That's why when you can see the characteristics of a spirit, regardless if the other person sees it or not, even if you're trying to figure out how to help that spirit, and you might be discussing it with another leader, like, man, how we gonna help that spirit? You see that pride that's on the brother, that's on the sister, and maybe even the other leader don't realize it. Like, well, I don't really see it, or the other brother, because we're supposed to be each other's brothers' keepers, sisters' keepers. You want to help your brother. You see a spirit, you want to show him, like, hey, that's that love, right? Maybe the other person may not see it either. Like, okay, you don't see it either. I'm going to leave it alone. But when you understand the characteristics of a spirit, it shows forth. Sometimes it's not time to speak on it. Again, like I said, you have to watch. You have to figure out how to move dealing with that spirit. Okay, and Lord's will, the brother and the sister could figure it out. Okay, and if it's time for you to help in that manner, then you move correctly to help in that manner. But this is how you see the characteristics. And remember, especially what? When it's on you. That way you could shake that thing. You could figure it out, right? You say, wait a minute. See how? You do that self-examination. You start doing your checks and balances. You start thinking about how you've been moving, how you dealt with, your brother, your sister, however, how you dealt with a situation. Like, you know what? I need to figure it out. I didn't like, now that I think back on it. All right. Read that part again. Proverbs 8:13.
This is the book of Proverbs, chapter 8 and verse 13. The fear of the Lord is to hate evil, pride, and arrogancy, and the evil way, and the forward mouth do I hate.
From there, we're going to go to Esther now. Esther, or the rest of Esther. We're going to go to chapter 16. Esther 16. I'm going to read 5 and 6.
This is the book of Esther in the Apocrypha, chapter 16 and verse 5. Oftentimes also fair speech of those that are put in trust to manage their friends' affairs.
So I went here. Why? Because what will happen is inside of this, what do you get? Because of that arrogancy, you get the fair speeches, or the scripture also speaks of swelling words. And it goes into feigning themselves or fakeness. That's the, I'm not going to say the aftermath because it could come first, but that's also a characteristic that you can see. That's also a characteristic that you will notice. Okay? Read it again.
The book of Esther, chapter 16 and verse 5. Oftentimes also fair speech of those that are put in trust to manage their friends' affairs had caused many that are in authority to be partakers of innocent blood, and had enwrapped them in remediless calamities.
Read.
Beguiling with the falsehood and deceit of their lewd disposition, the innocency of goodness of princes.
So it said, beguiling with the falsehood and deceit. Then it says of their lewd disposition. But that's what's always there. That deceit comes, the feigness, the fakeness. All right? These things always come. If you'll notice it, you'll see it. These are the characteristics of that spirit, that proud or that prideful spirit. It's coupled with arrogancy, and it's coupled with deceit. They run all together. These characteristics run together when that type of spirit is dealing with you, or if it's dealing with your brother or your sister. Go to 2 Peter 2. Watch. Peter talked about it. 2 Peter 2, we're going to start at verse 9.
It's the book of 2 Peter, chapter 2, and verse 9. The Lord knoweth how to deliver the godly out of temptations, and to preserve the unjust until a day of judgment.
Now Peter's calling that type of spirit or the person unjust, the unjust person, right? The unjust to punishment. Read on.
To preserve the unjust until the day of judgment to be punished, but chiefly them that walk after the flesh and the lust of uncleanness.
You see, chiefly to them that walk after the flesh. Remember, we started with the lust of the world, walking after the flesh, lust of the flesh in the eyes. Remember that? So chiefly them that walk after the flesh in the lust of uncleanness. Read.
And despise government. Presumptuous are they, self-willed.
Now, presumptuous and self-will. Go to presumptuous, because I know we probably don't know exactly what that's saying. Watch what the definition of presumptuous is. You might think about that other word, forward.
So dictionary.com, presumptuous. It's an adjective. Full of, characterized by, or showing presumption or readiness to presume in conduct or thought, as by saying or doing something without right or permission.
You see that? Saying or doing something without right or permission. Read number 2.
Number 2, unwarrantedly or impertinently, bold and forward.
You see that? Get the other definition. Just type in presumptuous. Don't go to Bible Dictionary. Type it in on just the regular Google. I like that when that pulls up, especially when it's saying not knowing without whatever it said in Bible Dictionary. Or dictionary.com. It wasn't Bible Dictionary, but yeah, let's read that one right there. Of a person or their behavior, right there.
All right, Google definition of a person or their behavior, failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate.
You see that? Because we read that before. I just like how it says it. It said failing to observe the limits of what is permitted or appropriate. That's why the scripture says, read that part again. It says, and despise government, presumptuous are they. They fail to know their limits. They fail to realize what's appropriate. That's what happens. You know how you hear leadership talk about, brother, just stay in your lane. That's what happens, though. And you see the characteristics of it. So, okay, that brother got a prideful spirit on him. Brother it's like they don't understand. Like the sister got a pride. They just don't get it either because the spirit is dealing with them. So now you know how to move to try to help them come up off that spirit, because that's the point of understanding. That's the point of seeing the spirits. Again, especially when it's what? On you, yourself. You got to pay attention. Read that again for us.
Book of 2 Peter, chapter 2 and verse 10. But chiefly them that walk after the flesh and the lust of uncleanness, and despise government, presumptuous are they, self-willed. They are not afraid to speak evil of dignities.
And that's what happens. Presumptuous, they're self-willed. They do things as they feel, without counsel. And a lot of times it's always the wrong thing. Sometimes, they might, do something right, and then you may not, if you're not paying attention, you may not catch it because the thing that they did, self-will, was like, well, I like that. That was good. I try to call it out whenever I see it. Hey, brother. Oh, yeah, that was cool. That was self-will. And the best thing is to see the smaller things. What I mean by that, things that don't necessarily affect the body or whatever it is. So why? So we can catch it on the lower level. So that way like, okay, cool. So that way it don't, then that brother or sister don't be self-willed where it's going to affect the whole body or whatever else. Affect the mission. You understand? Actually, drop down to verse 13. Read 13.
It's the book of 2 Peter, chapter 2, and verse 13. And shall receive the reward of unrighteousness, as they that count.
So now we're talking about these unjust spirits, this unjust person. Okay, read on.
As they that count it pleasure to ride in the daytime. Spots they are and blemishes, sporting themselves with their own deceivings.
While see that? It said sporting themselves with their own deceivings. That's just basically saying being fake, feigning themselves, playing with their own deceivings. Read.
While they feast with you, having eyes full of adultery.
You see that? Faking while they feast with you. That's all it's saying. Read.
Having eyes full of adultery, and that cannot cease from sin, beguiling unstable souls.
Notice it said beguiling again, unstable souls. Speaking of deceitfulness, read.
And heart they have exercised with covetous practices. Cursed children.
You see that? With covetous practices. With covetous, these are these characteristics that you will be seeing. And notice it said beguiling unstable souls. The souls that's not stable, they don't see. They don't see it. Just like we read in Esther, in the falsehoods and the beguiling with falsehoods. All right. That in on that? Or are we reading? Oh, no. We read 14?
Yes, sir.
Watch this. Drop down to 18.
Verse 18. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity.
You see that? When they speak great swelling. Same thing we read in Esther. But it said, what did it say in Esther? No, not falsehoods. The words part. Get that real quick so we can make the correlation. Fair speeches. There it is. Thank you. And Esther said fair speeches. Now you see in Peter it said what? Read that again.
For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lust of the flesh, through much wantonness.
That's how it happens. The covetous spirit and the prideful spirit run hand in hand. They link up with each other. You have to sometimes notice who you linked up with. Like, damn, if that's that spirit and I'm linked up, what the heck? What spirit am I? What spirit is dealing with me right now? All right, read on.
Those that will clean escape from them who live in error.
You see that? It said, read it again one more time.
Verse 18. For when they speak great swelling words of vanity, they allure through the lust of the flesh.
It said that lured through the lust of the flesh. Remember, we started this portion in John 2 talking about the lust of the flesh and eyes. These all run hand in hand. These are the characteristics that you could see and know what type of spirit that is. Finish it off.
Through much wantonness, those that were clean escape from them who live in error.
I want us to understand. So, understand again. Notice it said, I wanted to touch right back on the beguiling of unstable spirits. How can you see that or notice that in real time, so to speak? Like, okay, well, how do I know that's what's going on? Who would be the most unstable spirit in the congregation? The brand new brother or sister, huh? You'll notice these spirits that only seem like they only want to deal, not to help them out or not to kind of get to know them. You know how you'll send a brother, hey, brother, go check out that brother. Or, hey, sister, make sure you introduce, make them feel. No, you see this spirit always trying to cling to the brand new. Especially when you're like, I know they don't know too much. Like, what can they possibly be helping them with? But they always trying to be in the brand new spirit's ear for some reason. That's that characteristic. You can see it. The Bible helps you know. So when you look and see, like, I know that spirit. I can see with that. The Bible already talked about it. I can see. Now you got to be mindful of, are you that type of spirit? Or are you being genuine? Are you being sincere? You want to you want to help build someone, or you for some reason like, you know what? Let me just be honest with myself. I do be doing that. I need to quit that. I need to go be with somebody that's older than me so I can learn more. Why am I always, you know what I'm saying? I need to stop that. That's what we have to be mindful of. This is all for ourselves to build from. This is all so we can build from it. Learn what this Bible's telling us and showing us, not just reading words on a page. All right. From there, go to Sirach 19. Dealing with that deceitful part. Because this is another characteristic. This is what the Spirit will do. And you will be lost because you don't see it for what it is, and you see for what the person, the brother, sister, is doing. Sirach 19, verse 26.
It's the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 19, and verse 26. Mm-hmm. There is a wicked man that hangeth down his head sadly, but inwardly he is full of deceit.
Right, because that's what happened too. And sisters is good for that. Brothers as well. They act like they're so contrite in their spirit. They just can't believe they done. When you call them on it, of course, because that's what happens. They get caught up on something. Now you may have to judge the matter. They getting the matter judged by whoever the leader is. And they come back like, man, I can't believe what I did. Like, and you're like, oh yeah, okay. You of course you're gonna take them for their sincerity if they come into you. Right. Oh, the brother's contrite. Okay, this is contrite. But over time, if you see they display the same type of thing, because what does the scripture says? But inwardly, they're full of deceit. And you'll see it like, wait, I thought the brother said, they came to me, man. They had me fooled. Why? Read on.
Verse 27, casting down his countenance and making as if he heard not, where he is not known, he will do thee a mischief before thou be aware.
Beguiling that unstable soul. Because someone who is not built up in the spirit, they don't know no different. Now they are on their side. You got brothers and sisters, yeah, that ain't right what they did to me. Not knowing that they're beguiled. Read on.
Verse 28, and if for want of power he be hindered from sinning, yet when he findeth opportunity, he will do evil.
He will do that evil. That's what will happen. These are these different characteristics. Now, if you're not thinking about it, you're not going to see it. You will be the beguiled. If you're not paying attention and not thinking about it, you're not going to see it. I'm not talking about having no evil eye towards no one. I'm talking about noticing characteristics of spirits. Because what happens is we oftentimes look at the man. We'll look at the man, and we're not noticing the spirit that may be dealing with that man. We'll look at the man, the brother or the sister, instead of seeing the spirit of men. And that's what happened. That's why we don't see things, and sometimes it be displayed fully right in front of our face. And sometimes the other brother might talk to you, the other sister say, sis, you don't see that? Like, nah, what do you mean? I don't get it. They're like, girl, you better pay attention to this. Brother, you don't see? Nah, bro, nah, he's a good brother. Have to be mindful, especially for yourself when the Spirit is dealing with you. So you could know, like, wait a minute, I need to switch that up. I need to pray that off me. I need to fast that off me. Whatever it's going to take, I need to be mindful of it. When they try to have me move a certain way, I'm like, wait a minute, why would I be moving that way over that? Why did I just do that? Let me sit down and think about this thing. Why did I just move? What was in my head? What was I? Why did I even think that way? Because what just happened, what transpired. That don't make no sense when I sit down and actually analyze it. Hold on. I know what spirit that is. No way. I'm not going to let that thing try to creep in me. Go to Isaiah 13, verse 11. Isaiah 13, verse 11.
This is the book of Isaiah, chapter 13 and verse 11. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible.
And again, we want to understand some of these things sometimes. Why? So we don't get caught up. Because the Lord ain't going to play. And the Lord is not playing with us. Notice it said, I will punish the world for their evil. Talking about the evil. The wicked for their iniquity. Talking about the wicked and iniquity. Sin. It said, I will cause the arrogancy of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible. Why? Because that's the next thing. That's what comes behind it. Now, let's look at a different type of spirit, because again, you got the pride and you got the haughty. Now, we know the woman haughty, we know. Actually, we'll touch on that because I think I touched on that a little bit. Let's go into that. Where am I at? What we just read?
I said 13.
13, 11.
Yep.
Right, the pompous of the arrogant. Actually, what I want to do is now I'm going to go to the opposite. So we understand that prideful spirit and be mindful of that, because the Lord will destroy you. The Lord will destroy you over that thing. Now, the opposite of prideful spirit, bashful spirit. Sometimes you can be prideful because that's what it'll make you bashful, because you're prideful. Don't want to ask for help, right? But let's go into that. Go to Sirach 20. Another way you could destroy your own self, as far as what the scripture tells us. What the scripture says. Sirach 20, and we're going to read verse 22.
It's the book of Sirach, chapter 20 and verse 22. There is that destroyeth his own soul through bashfulness.
You see that? So there's a one that destroyeth his own soul through bashfulness. Read on.
And by accepting of persons overthroweth himself.
It says, by accepting of persons overthrow himself. Now we're going to see what runs hand in hand with this characteristic, or with this type of spirit. What characteristics run hand in hand together? We're talking about bashfulness, and then we heard accepting of persons. It says, overthrow him himself. Read on. Now we're going to get an example. Read.
Verse 23. There is that for bashfulness promiseth to his friend, and maketh him his enemy for nothing.
So, it says, promise to his friend but make him an enemy. How does that happen? Why? Because you tell your friend you could do something, and now you're too bashful to actually say, you know what, I can't. I don't got it. Or I can't do it. You're too bashful to say that, and then what does it look like to your friend? You are now a liar. You end up standing your friend up, or you end up not coming through when you said, so now you're not a man of your word or a woman of your word. That's how you make your friend an enemy for nothing. Because if you wasn't so bashful and just told them, hey, man, I do really want to, but I can't, man. They're not going to, that's your friend. They're going to be like, oh, okay, all praises. Well, at least you let me know. But if you so bashful, you talk about, yeah, I got to, then you don't come through. Now, the other brother, the other sister's like, man, they ain't a man of their word. Man, I can't deal with them. That's what happens. So that's an example that it gives us, right? Go to Sirach chapter 4. We also heard accepting of person, because this is a part that we do often as Israel. We do often. We have that man-pleaser spirit. We have that respecter of person spirit. It's all the same. It coexists. It's one and the same. They run hand in hand as well. Read verse 22 in chapter 4, Sirach 4:22.
This is the book of Sirach, chapter 4 and verse 22. Accept no person against thy soul, and let not the reverence of any man cause thee to fall.
See what the Bible tells us, though. It says, accept no person against your soul, and don't let the reverence of any man cause you to fall. Because that's what will happen. We see it time and time again. A lot of us seen it last year, whatever, how long it's been now. That's what happens. That's what happens. Go to Job. Back to Job. Job got some wisdom. Back to Job. Go to chapter 13. And we're going to read verse 10.
This is the book of Job, chapter 13 and verse 10. He will surely reprove you if you do secretly accept persons.
You see that? What will God do?
He will surely reprove you if you do secretly accept persons.
God will definitely correct your butt. You will be reproved. I don't want to be reproved by God. It said, you will surely, read it again.
He will surely reprove you if you do secretly accept persons.
If that's how you roll, you will surely get reproved by the Lord. And you can see those characteristics as well. How do we see this? Again, you can see how people move. The scriptures talks about man pleasing. We got that example for the bashfulness. It told us, do not let something, because you respect someone or you reverence someone, cause you to fall. You'll see brothers moving blindly. That's how it happens. We want to always be mindful that's why the scriptures tell you to study yourself approved. Study to show yourself approved. A workman that is not ashamed. Rightly. Matter of fact, go ahead and get that. Rightly dividing the word of truth. Rightly. That's why I want that rightly. Read that real quick.
It's the book of 2 Timothy, chapter 2 and verse 15. Mm-hmm. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needed not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth.
You see that? Rightly dividing the word of truth. Rightly. Now, when you first come in, it's a certain... You're moving blindly to a certain extent because you know nothing. And you're seeing men and you're seeing brothers and sisters that's moving according to the Bible as far as what you can possibly see. So you're going to listen. You're going to learn. You're going to say, okay, this is what it is. So I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about chasing the wisdom either. Hanging on a leadership's coattails because you're trying to get that wisdom. Not talking about that either. I'm talking about moving blindly to where when there's iniquity involved, when there's sin, these different characteristics are sticking out and you can't see it because of your reverence. That's what the Bible's talking about. Now you just don't see, you're oblivious. That's what the Bible's talking about. Now you fall. All right. Go back. Well, matter of fact, go to Deuteronomy 1 because we're talking about respect of persons, acceptings of persons. Look at one. The first thing Moses told the men that he chose to be judges, to help judge matters. Look at the first thing that he said. Yep, Deuteronomy 1, verse 16.
It's the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 1 and verse 16.
Mm-hmm.
And I charged your judges at the time, saying, hear the causes between your brethren, and judge righteously between every man and his brother.
It said judge righteously between every man and his brother.
And the stranger that is with him.
Read.
Verse 17. You shall not respect persons in judgment.
You shall not respect persons in judgment. You shall not respect persons in judgment. Read on.
But ye shall hear the small as well as the great.
Mm-hmm.
Ye shall not be afraid of the face of man, for the judgment is God's.
You see that? Because the judgment is God. You should not be afraid of faces of men because the judgment is God's. Read.
And the cause that is too hard for you, bring it unto me, and I will hear it.
Right. And Moses was telling them, and look, if you can't discern, bring it to me. I'll take it from there. Go to Sirach 26, verse 9. Oh, yeah. I thought I touched on Hadi a little bit. So now these are all the characteristics of a bashful spirit, because they would be a man pleaser, they would be a respecter of a person. You can see it like, okay, this person just maybe needs to build their spirit up. They need to come up out of that. Sometimes brothers and sisters may seem as if they're not men or women of their word, but it's because they have that bashful spirit on them. You can see the ones that probably, they need help and they won't say nothing, right? They have that bashful spirit on them. Okay? Brothers and sisters, and this happens more so on the brother side. They'll be following up behind someone that's not showing great examples because they have a bashful spirit, and I don't know what they may be thinking. Brother got lots of precepts, maybe. I don't know. They reverence the person like the scripture says. All right? And now they can't see nothing else. All right? Moving on. Sirach 26, verse 9.
It's the book of Sirach, or Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26 and verse 9. The whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids.
So now we're touching on that haughty part that we read up earlier. Where was we at when we touched on that? Isaiah 13, right? Right. Yep. Okay, now we're touching on that part. Read that.
The book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 26 and verse 9. The whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids.
You see that? It said the whoredom of a woman may be known in her haughty looks and eyelids. I often refer to that when actually I always go to Proverbs 6, so let's go there. Proverbs 6:25. I always think about the Lion King movie. When Simba and Nala met, when they got older and they was wrestling. And she looked at him and batted her eyes. Read that, Proverbs 6:25.
It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and verse 25. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids.
It said, neither let her take thee with the eyelids. I always think about that. I don't know why. I always think about that. If y'all don't know what I'm talking about, you got to go look at the original Lion King. Not that crap they did. Not that. The original regular cartoon. Not that whatever they call it. What is it? The CGI, whatever. The regular cartoon original that came out in 92, Lion King. All right? 94, whatever it was. Back then. In that part when they met each other again out there in Pumbaa and Timon's territory, and they wrestled, and Simba actually pounced on top of her. This, because first she did, then he did, and she looked at him, and she licked him. She batted them eyes. Oh, look, he pulled it up. Oh, there it is. Mm-hmm. Right. Oh, you showed me. Okay, you didn't show them. And you see what I'm talking about, why I always think of that. So anyways, read that one more time for us. 6:25, huh? Oh, yeah, you can, if you can. You got to be a quick clip. They might cut us out of here. This is funny, huh? See them eyes? Now when you play it, she blinks too, like they knew what they was doing. She batted her eyes. So anyways, all right, all praises. Read that again, Proverbs 6:25.
It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and verse 25. Lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids.
Watch this. Now we're going to read it all again, but we're going to start at 24. And we're going to go down to 26.
It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 6 and verse 24.
Remember, we're coming off of Sirach, chapter 26.
To keep thee from the evil woman, from the flattery of the tongue of a strange woman, lust not after her beauty in thine heart, neither let her take thee with her eyelids.
Read on.
For by means of a whorish woman a man is bought to a piece of bread, and the adulterers will hunt for the precious
You
life.
see that? The whorish woman. You say you know them by their haughty looks and their eyelids. That's that haughty spirit. All right? That's that haughty spirit. And you know that spirit by that. You know that. Go to Proverbs 31:30. We have to remember something. What does it say? Especially for you sisters. Now, does this mean that you can't be beautiful? No, this doesn't mean that. Of course you can be beautiful. You beautiful regardless. You're an Israelite sister, so, I mean, we got the most beautiful sisters on the earth.
Bring it out.
But just remember what? Read that, Proverbs 31:30.
It's the book of Proverbs, chapter 31 and verse 30. Favor is deceitful, and beauty is vain.
That thing is vain if that's what it is to you. If that's all you're thinking about,
Right.
that thing is vain. It's of no necessity. Read.
But a woman that feareth the Lord, she shall be praised.
That's who go get that praise. The woman that fear the Lord. Remember in Timothy 2? I don't got this one, but read that real quick just to show when it's telling a woman. Read that. Let's see that.
It's the book of 1 Timothy, chapter 2 and verse 9. In like manner also, that the women adorn themselves in modest apparel, with shamefacedness and sobriety, not with broided hair, or gold, or pearls, or costly array, but which becometh women professing godliness.
Right. Now, is that saying you can't put none of that stuff on? And no, that ain't saying that. That's saying that's what you do. That's what you do, but it's not all about that. It's more so should be about that inner woman. That's what it's saying. It's saying you can't do all that. It's saying that's what you do. Watch that from there. Let's go to Susanna. Susanna, we're going to read verse 55 and 56.
This is the book of the history of Susanna, verse 55. And Daniel said, very well, thou hast lied against thine own head. For even now the angel of God had received the sentence of God to cut thee in two.
This when Daniel did a cross-examination. Read.
Verse 56. So he put him aside and commanded to bring the other, and said unto him, O thou seed of Canaan, and not of Judah, beauty had deceived thee, and lust had perverted thine heart.
You see that? It said, beauty have deceived thee, and lust have perverted thy heart. He was lusting after a woman. Now, the coldest part is, Susanna wasn't being haughty. But I just want you to see what that does, what beauty does. Beauty will deceive you. Beauty will deceive you. You got the little memes up all over Facebook nowadays. I see it every so often. They be having the before and then the after picture of the sister, and it shows the 4 stages of how she went from this to deceit. Pure deceit. Go to Psalms 81, verse 12. Psalms 81 and verse 12.
This is the book of Psalms, chapter 81 and verse 12. So I gave them up unto their own heart's lust, and they walked in their own counsels.
Read that one more time for me.
The book of Psalms, chapter 81 and verse 12. So I gave them up unto their own heart's lust, and they walked in their own
You
counsels.
see that? That's how the Most High will do. To our own heart's lust, and then we'll end up walking in our own counsels. If we roll in that covetous spirit, the lustful spirit, we roll in that deceit because of our pride. All right? These are all these different characteristics that you could be mindful of and know what type of spirit that is. All right? These are all these different type of characteristics. And that's what will happen to us. I mean, so we don't want to be rolling like that. But you can see it. It's important to be able to identify it. All right? We have a lot of hints and clues and ways we could identify these type of spirits by looking for characteristics of the spirit. All right? This is not to try to tell somebody, oh, you have that because I know. No, this is so mainly to help yourself. And then you can help a fellow brother and sister if you happen to notice these characteristics. All right? I want to end, though, with a good spirit, which is a sincere spirit. This is a way to see sincerity in a brother or sister and making sure that you are this type of spirit, a sincere spirit. Go to 1 Peter 1. What would be a couple characteristics that type of sincere spirit will have? 1 Peter 1, and let's read verse 22.
This is the book of 1 Peter, chapter 1, and verse 22. Seeing ye have purified your souls in obeying the truth through the Spirit unto unfeigned love of the brethren.
Notice it said unfeigned love. And it said obeying the Spirit of truth. Read on.
See that ye love one another with a pure heart fervently.
Okay, so unfeigned love, obeying the Spirit of truth. What is that talking about? 1 Timothy 1. 1 Timothy 1, and let's read verse 5.
It's the book of 1 Timothy, chapter 1, and verse 5. Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and of good conscience, and of a good conscience, and of faith unfeigned.
You see that? And it says of faith unfeigned. You always see when someone is wholeheartedly, that's what they do, how they are. Not looking for nothing, not looking for credit, kudos, that's just who they are. That brother that's just super charitable, he can't help it. You got to tell that brother, hey, brother, make sure you don't give above your means, brother. Come on now. All praises. That's a brother that you got to be checking yourself about because you don't want to fall into usury. Like, man, I don't want like, yeah, bro, I know who'll do it. I know. Hey, brother. You could tell these sincere spirits. Yeah, we all deal with stuff. That don't mean that the sincere spirit may not have got the devil on them sometime. We all deal with stuff, but you can see these type of sincere spirits by these attributes, by these characteristics. From there, go to 2 Chronicles 32. Let's see what else. 2 Chronicles. And I didn't do too much. This is just quick, small. Just quick characteristics that you can see with a sincere spirit. It's easy to see it. What I say, 2 Chronicles 32, and we're going to read verse 24 through 26.
It's the book of 2 Chronicles, chapter 32 and verse 24. In those days Hezekiah was sick to the death, and prayed unto the Lord, and he spake unto him, and he gave him a sign. But Hezekiah rendered not again according to the benefit done unto him, for his heart was lifted up. Therefore there was wrath upon him, and upon Judah and Jerusalem.
It said he was prideful, and there was wrath on him. Read on.
Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself for the pride.
But what'd he do?
He humbled himself.
That's another characteristic of what a sincere spirit would do. You can see, hey, like I said, Hezekiah mess around, got pride on him. Why? Because he just got done beating. Who did God fight? Let me read that real fast. I forgot. Right, the Assyrians, right? So Sennacherib. So Most High had just came and delivered him. He was like, yeah. Got puffed up. Then the wrath of the Lord had to get on his butt. Had to reprove him. Remember what we read? He had to reprove his butt. And he was what? Read that again, verse 26.
Notwithstanding, Hezekiah humbled himself from the pride of his heart.
You see that? For the pride of his heart, he humbled himself. These are these sincere spirits that are able to humble themselves. Once they notice and realize, they can humble themselves to correct themselves. Read.
Both he and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, so that the wrath of the Lord came not upon them in the days of Hezekiah.
You see that? And then the Most High said, okay, all praises. Good brother, I won't deal with you. So you have to be able to humble yourself when you see a spirit maybe dealing with you. Spirit may jump on you, might deal with you, might start moving in that fashion for whatever reason. Sometimes it's situational. Most of the time it's situational. But we can't use that as the reason. We do, though, often. Just like we say, oh, he did this. No, he didn't do nothing. Okay, he did. That's true. He might have dealt with you unrighteously to make you act a certain way. So, okay, I get it. But you still did that way. If I lined up 10 people and had this person do this same thing to all 10 people, they're all going to react differently. That's why I'm trying to get the understanding of it. It's not necessarily what someone done to you. It's how you dealt with that. Because we don't all react the same way. We all deal with things differently. Although the same exact thing happened to us. That's how you know it's you. Can't nobody make you mad, sad, happy, glad, but you. And now you have your own reasons. That's why we say, oh, I have a trigger or whatever else. We have our own reasons why we'll be mad, happy, or sad. And yes, we have brothers and sisters that may deal not according to the scriptures, but now how are you going to deal? So again, if you realize the dang spirits on you based on characteristics you realize within yourself, you could be humble enough to correct it. You humble yourself. And then God won't put his wrath on you. You could be able to be humble. That's a sincere spirit. When you read the next chapter in 33, Manasseh had to do the same thing. He had to humble himself. All right? Manasseh had to do the same thing. So, Israel, let's learn from our examples that we have in the Bible. Let's gain understanding from it. We learn and gain understanding from all these different examples and the different things that we read in the Bible to show us how we can conduct ourselves, to give us understanding of if we're conducting ourselves a certain way, what that is, what that means. So if we need to correct, we can correct, self-correct. All right? Learn how to look at the spirit of a man, the spirit that may be dealing with that man and not just the man, because you're looking at them through carnal eyes. If you're looking at the man only, that's carnal. All right? So, shalom, Israel. Most High Christ bless you all. And as always, make sure you remember, we pushing this truth throughout the four corners of the earth, period. If you have not tapped in, make sure you tap in. All right? Join the Booster Club. We got it up there. You put it up. All right, all praises. Remember, it's iuic.fundraising@israelunite.org. All right? Join the Booster Club. Also, remember to hop on the podcast. That's easy to get to. Or IUIC podcast. Boom. Straight to the podcast. I know we all done heard already now about this folly in the earth, the COVID-19. So, Lord's will, everybody have a great and safe Passover in their respective cities and states. We won't be together in North Carolina. But as most of you probably have heard, we got things in the work. So, Lord's will, we'll be able to see each other soon and come together. Those of you that decide to do it, I think I'm going to go ahead and do that thing, So all praises. But as far as Passover, hey, everybody have a great Passover in your respective states, cities, locally. Hey, you can think about it this way. The Lord wants us to stay at home for the Passover. You never know what he might do. Hey, but all praises to the Most High Israel. Shalom again. Most High Christ bless you all.
segregation, celebrate.